The war in Ukraine, civilian and military casualties. Now, I know that talking about war is not exactly the most exciting topic, but trust me, this is a topic that needs to be discussed. This conflict has been ongoing for years and has had a profound impact on the people of Ukraine. To give you a little bit of background, the conflict began in 2014 when the Ukrainian government was overthrown in a revolution. This led to a conflict between the Ukrainian government and separatists in the eastern regions of Ukraine, who were supported by Russia. The conflict has been characterized by a series of ceasefires and violations, and has resulted in thousands of deaths and displacement of civilians. Now in this video, we're going to be focusing specifically on the civilian and military casualties of the war. I want to emphasize how important it is to understand the human impact of the conflict, beyond just the political and military aspects. This is a topic that is often overlooked or forgotten, but it's important to remember that every casualty represents a person whose life has been impacted in a profound way. So I hope that by the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of the human impact of the war in Ukraine and the importance of supporting those who have been affected by it. Let's dive in. Part 1. Civilian casualties. According to the United Nations, more than 13,000 people have been killed since the conflict began in 2014, and over 1.5 million people have been displaced. One of the biggest challenges that civilians have faced in this conflict is displacement. Many people have had to leave their homes due to the fighting, and as a result, they have lost their communities, their livelihoods, and in some cases, their loved ones. The United Nations estimates that over 3 million people in Ukraine require humanitarian assistance, including food, water, and shelter. In addition to displacement, civilians have also faced other challenges, such as a loss of infrastructure and psychological trauma. The conflict has caused significant damage to homes, schools, hospitals, and other essential infrastructure, making it difficult for people to access basic services. The psychological impact of the conflict has also been significant, with many people experiencing anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the violence. Part 2. Military casualties. The war in Ukraine has not only impacted civilians, but it has also taken a heavy toll on the military personnel who have been fighting to defend their country. According to the Ukrainian government, over 14,000 soldiers have been killed in the conflict, with many more injured. Military personnel have been impacted in numerous ways, including physical and psychological injuries. Soldiers on the front lines face the constant threat of injury or death, with many experiencing traumatic events that can have a lasting impact on their mental health. Soldiers who have been injured in combat often face lifelong and difficult recoveries, with some sustaining injuries that will affect them for the rest of their lives. The Ukrainian military faces significant challenges in fighting against the separatists, including lack of resources and equipment. Many soldiers are forced to rely on outdated or inadequate equipment, which puts them at a significant disadvantage on the battlefield. In addition, the military is often stretched thin, with soldiers working long hours and facing difficult conditions. Despite these challenges, the Ukrainian military remains committed to defending their country and pushing back against the separatists. With the support of their government and international allies, they continue to fight for a peaceful and secure future for Ukraine. Part 3. International response. The conflict in Ukraine has definitely not gone unnoticed by the international community, with many countries and organizations taking action to support Ukraine and condemn Russian aggression. One notable response has been the imposition of sanctions against Russia by the United States and European Union. The sanctions were put in place in response to Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its support for separatist rebels in eastern Ukraine. The sanctions have had a significant impact on Russia's economy, with restrictions on access to international finance and limits on exports of key commodities like oil and gas. In addition to sanctions, the United States and European Union have provided significant support to Ukraine, both in terms of financial assistance and military aid. The United States has provided over $2 billion in aid to Ukraine since the conflict began, including support for economic reforms and the provision of military equipment and training. The European Union has also been a major supporter of Ukraine, providing over 15 billion euros in loans and grants to support the country's economy and infrastructure. The EU has also imposed its own sanctions against Russia, targeting individuals and companies that have been involved in the conflict. One major obstacle is political opposition from countries that have close ties to Russia, including some members of the European Union. These countries have been reluctant to take such strong action against Russia and have opposed efforts to provide significant financial or military assistance to Ukraine. Bureaucratic challenges also play a role, with some aid organizations struggling to navigate the complex rules and regulations involved in providing assistance to Ukraine. To wrap it up, it is important to remember that behind the statistics and numbers, there are real people with real stories. We've heard the stories of civilians who have lost loved ones, who have been forced to flee their homes. We heard the stories of children who have been injured or killed in combat. These stories remind us of the human cost of war and the urgent need for a peaceful resolution to the conflict. It is crucial that we continue to support those who have been impacted by the conflict. This includes not only providing financial aid and material assistance to those in need, but also working to address the underlying causes of the conflict and promoting dialogue and reconciliation between different groups. Only through a sustained and concerted effort can we hope to bring about lasting peace and stability in Ukraine. You and I can also play a role in supporting those impacted by the war. We can educate ourselves on the conflict and the various organizations working to provide assistance to those in need. We can also take action by donating to these organizations or volunteering our time to support their efforts. Together, we can make a difference and build a better, more peaceful world for all.